Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone, on this first day of spring. Welcome to our Bylaws Review Subcommittee. We have in the room myself and our support team. Trustee McLean is in the room, as is Associate Director Pon, and others are online. I'd like to call this meeting to order with the acknowledgement of traditional lands. If you can stand, please do. We acknowledge we're hosted on the lands of the Mississaugas of the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, and the Wendat. We also recognize the enduring presence of First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples. Thank you. Just as an aside, is it people or peoples? The slide says people and the agenda says peoples. If we could just check that, if you could just check that for next time and we can be consistent, that would be great. Thank you so much. Are there any declarations of possible conflict of interest? I'm hearing none. Are there any delegations? Oh, sorry, I didn't approve the agenda. May I please have a motion to approve the agenda? Thank you, Trustee Williams. Thank you, Trustee Williams. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much. And sorry, I skipped past that one. No declarations of possible conflict of interest, no delegations. So we're into the meat of the agenda. Sorry, vegetarians. 5.1, 708, the complaint protocol for the board member code of conduct. And I'm going to go to Associate Director Pon, please.
Good afternoon. We do have a slide deck to help guide the discussion. So if I can be shared. Sorry? Sorry, I can't hear you.
No.
We have two. Yeah.
It'll just be a minute. Maybe you can.
Yeah, so I can start. So thank you very much, trustees, for your comments and feedback from the previous committee meetings. We've, as you can see from Appendix A, we've made a number of significant changes to the draft procedure as a result of the feedback. And I think, sorry, we do need the slide deck up.
Just making sure we got the right one.
So some of the feedback that we did get was to embed a pre-complaint resolution process.
Excuse me for a minute.
Sorry.
Is it the issues for consideration slide deck? Which?
Can I see?
Yes. Sorry, we'll just be a minute. We're just sorting this out.
Here's another one.
Can her mic be on?
Through the chair, if Vitaly Plotnikov could send the slide deck again to Mensch, and we'll have that on the screen.
Sure, we'll just wait a minute.
Thank you very much. I will go through the document in the meantime. Thank you. We have included different definitions of bad faith, frivolous, and vexatious complaints, as was provided in terms of the feedback that was given. Please do recall that it is up to the Integrity Commissioner to determine bad faith, frivolous, and vexatious. And so you'll see in the procedure that we have put in words that state it's the Integrity Commissioner's interpretation. We
May I just ask for clarification? Do you want to stop after a section and see if there's any questions? Would that be the best way to do it? Or do you want to go through it all?
Yeah.
And then we come back and people will jot their comments down? I just want to clarify.
Yeah, if possible, let me go through it all, and then because it
Perfect.
might answer some questions.
So,
as we go along.
colleagues, as Ms. Pong goes through these things, please jot down if you have any questions or concerns so that we can address them once she finishes the whole thing.
Thank you very much. We did update some definitions on the definition of complainant. As you might recall, a member of the public or a staff member who has a complaint must submit it to a trustee. And I'll talk about that a little further later on. Discrimination and harassment, we just updated the definitions and included that based on the feedback that was provided. We just made it very clear that notice of complaint is a written notification, and just definition of the notice of complaint recipient has also been updated. One of the comments that was provided over the last few meetings was the need to perhaps have an ability for members to try to sort things out before a formal complaint is launched, right? So before the complaint goes into that email address. And so we have adopted for the vast majority of the language that was shared by OPSPA and their templates. So we call it the voluntary pre-complaint resolution. So this is well before a complaint is filed. And so the language in here adopts most of what OPSPA had in their template. Really, it's to encourage folks to try to work it out before it goes any further. It does state in here that the chair on their own initiative may meet with a member of the board in which the alleged breach of the code of conduct, but there's no requirement to do so. So it's a little slightly different than what has been done. And so really the purpose of the meeting is to bring the allegation of the breach to the attention of the member of the board. And also this process would be conducted in private. There were some comments about confidentiality. We have included that in here as well. Then we move on to the formal complaint process if the voluntary pre-complaint process is not successful. And you'll see some updated language in there. There was a comment, there were several comments from our last meeting about concerns trustees have of being the recipient of a complaint from a member of the public or a staff member who is then responsible for forwarding it to the email address. We've tried to resolve that issue by stating that a member of the public or a staff can send the email to the send the complaint to the email address, and we will deem it under this procedure to have been received by the notice of complaint recipient. And remember, the notice of complaint recipient could be chair, vice chair, or any trustee. So it helps address the concern about unnecessarily being involved as a trustee, but it also makes sure that we have it connected to a trustee, so the deeming is in there. The next major set of changes is the early complaint resolution process. So there was a bit of confusion at the last meeting about a voluntary pre-complaint resolution, and once you get into the once you submit it into the email address, what happens during that 20-day period. So we've clarified and based on the feedback that it is a 20 business day period. And you can engage in some private mediation between the parties. We've adopted some concepts from the OPSPA template where the chair or whoever the person who is involved in that piece could retain a mediator, a third-party mediator, to assist in resolving the matter. That is a very significant change from the last draft. It is a cost item as well. I've spoken to our Associate Director Zucker about potential costs arising from not only the mediator, but also you'll see later on we include provisions on legal reimbursement, legal cost reimbursement. In any event, that really just provides an opportunity. There's no requirement for a mediator. And if there is one that is potentially helpful in that situation, the director's office or a designate can help facilitate the retention of a mediator. Okay, and so the rest of the language here is to talk about what happens during that process. Small little adjustments to 6.4 to clarify that's the integrity commissioner who undertakes the threshold assessment to see if the complaint falls within this code. And then the rest of the procedure, just tiny little changes to clarify some terminology. Starting at section 6.8, payment of legal costs. We had a good discussion last time about what we see in our current procedure, up to $5,000 for the complaint process, and then up to $20,000 for potential judicial review under certain circumstances. And usually the circumstances if the integrity commissioner finds that there had been no breach. We've adopted and modified some of the language to fit the new integrity commissioner process. For now, we've added up to $5,000 in legal expenses reimbursement to respond to a complaint. So again, to respond to a complaint, not to help initiate a complaint, to respond to a complaint. To respond to an appeal, let's say the trustee whose conduct is in question is the respondent in an appeal, so the board appeals the decision. There could be a maximum reimbursement of up to $10,000. And in the case of an application for judicial review, you'll see it's to commence or respond to a judicial review application up to a maximum of $20,000. That is to align with our current concepts in the old code of conduct. We can certainly shift that if that is needed, but this allows the trustee whose conduct is in question to commence or respond to a JR application and seek reimbursement under certain conditions. And you'll see the next few sections, there could be an advance made with approval of the board. Costs under 6.8.3, costs will only be reimbursed under this section to the member of the board if the integrity commissioner or the appeal panel concludes that there has been no contravention of the code of conduct by the member of the board or the judicial review decisions in favor of the member of the board. And the word no is actually quite key. So in some cases, there might be multiple allegations, a finding of a breach in allegation number 2, but the rest of them are not. So this, at this moment, subject to your comments and direction, is there has to be a finding of no breach whatsoever in order to seek possible reimbursement. Another set of comments was just maybe making more explicit confidentiality in this process. So we have added 6.9.1 to the procedure. And that's those are my comments. The other changes are just to align with that. And I do have to say, once this complaint protocol is updated, we will have to make some slight adjustments to the code of conduct to align with the complaint procedure, and that together as a package that will go to GPC as a recommendation of this committee, and then hopefully to the board. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I am sure each of us on the committee has questions, so I'm going to start with Trustee McLean, and then Trustee Williams, then Trustee King, then I will make my comments. And I'm not sure if there are any other trustees on the call, but if you please put your name in the chat and we will add you after we do a first round of the 4 committee members. Trustee McLean, please go ahead.
Thank you, and through the chair. First, I want to thank the Associate Director and all the staff that contributed to this work and have incorporated the discussions into the document. So thank you for that. mediator, that's totally at the discretion of the chair, that there is no, the complainant doesn't, it's not something that I'd like to get this resolved and they can't ask for it, or that request would have to be agreed upon by the chair. Is that correct?
Through the chair, yes. We would encourage members to want to seek a way to mediate, whether through a third party or not. But ultimately, it would be the chair who's involved to, or the vice chair, depending on whoever the respondent is, to agree to that.
Okay, thank you. And can that be done in the pre-approval process?
Yes, it's in the the voluntary pre-complaint resolution step. So
Okay.
even before a complaint is filed, we want to try to make an effort at resolving it.
Okay, and then.
But I should note, sorry to interrupt, the time does not suspend while that process is ongoing. So as you know, with the complaint procedure, there's 60 days to file a complaint. Otherwise, the Integrity Commissioner can say that's not within his jurisdiction. Because you're engaging in a mediation process, that 60-day period is not suspended. It will continue while that time happens. So if there is a need to do something like a mediation, it really should be occurring quickly, or allow the complaint to go to the next step, and then maybe the Integrity Commissioner can make sure that it's held in abeyance. Those are some of the things I would probably recommend in that type of situation to allow mediation to occur. Thanks.
I'm going to follow up there then, initially, through the chair. If they were happening simultaneously so that it in fact went to the Integrity Commissioner, would the Integrity Commissioner then have to approve the mediated resolution, or like, because it's on their plate now and at their discretion, would the parties be able to mediate independently, or would the Integrity Commissioner have to agree?
Through the chair, the Integrity Commissioner would not have to agree to the mediation, to the outcome of the mediation. They are there. Once it lands on their plate, they start an investigation in a timely fashion, and the rest of their process continues. So it can happen at the same time. What I would recommend is, if it does get forwarded to the Integrity Commissioner in order to meet the timelines, that communication is sent to the Integrity Commissioner that there's a mediation process that's ongoing. And what normally happens in my experience is the Integrity Commissioner would say, that's fine, I will hold off on starting my investigation until I hear from you further. So that's something that we would probably work out with the Integrity Commissioner. I would imagine the Integrity Commissioner would be very much in favor of hoping the parties can resolve it themselves to avoid having to conduct mediation and the next steps that follows. So that is a process that we can work out with the Integrity Commissioner once this complaint procedure is finalized.
Excuse me, given this conversation, I think I'm reconsidering how we should do this. I think we should do all comments by section first, instead of jumping all over the place and then starting again, jumping all over the place, to see if we have consensus by section.
Sure.
So Trustee McLean, if you have other comments on the voluntary pre-complaint resolution piece first, and then I'll seek comments on that to see if we can have consensus on moving forward, if that's okay.
You're the chair, so I serve at the pleasure of the chair, and I have nothing further as it pertains to this section.
To the volunteer part. Okay. Trustee Williams, do you have any comments on under procedure 6.2, the voluntary pre-complaint process?
Thank you, and through the chair. The voluntary pre-complaint process, I was just looking to make sure that the language is clear, even in the pre-complaint piece of this, that these are allegations. Some of the wording kind of, in my mind, makes the assumption that the breach has actually occurred. I don't know if staff can speak to that. Just some of the wording.
Through the chair, we did adopt 95% of the OPSPA language in this particular part. We could take a look at seeing, I think, are you referring to 6.2.1? It's recognized that from time to time, a contravention of the code may occur that is trivial and so on. Is that, I just wanted to make sure I understand.
Which section?
Yeah.
I was looking more part B of that when it goes down to 6.2.3, A and B.
To encourage the member of the board. Sorry, I should go back.
Really part B there.
Mhm.
It seems to make the assumption that the breach has occurred. And I'm just wondering if that could be like prejudicial to the steps that come afterwards.
We can, through the chair, change the word prohibited to say encourage the member of the board to stop the conduct in question.
Or to address, it's difficult to wordsmith on the spot, but it's that pre-complaint process is like still an allegation. It's an allegation that's been made,
Mhm.
and it's encouraging resolution of that allegation. You know, even in the pre-consultation, the pre-complaint piece of this, the parties may come to the conclusion, yes, it falls within the category of what's described in 6.21. You know, inadvertent or an error in judgment, um, whether or not it actually did contravene the code.
Mhm.
So the essence of what I'm asking is about the assumptive, not making any assumptions that that the code has actually been breached, even in the voluntary pre-complaint resolution piece, and the question about whether that any of that could be prejudicial to the steps that follow.
Through the chair, it would not be prejudicial to the steps that follow. However, the preamble to 6.2.3, individuals, including members of the board, staff members, and members of the public who have identified or witnessed conduct by a member of the board that they believe is in contravention of the code may address it in the following way. So that belief part might address your particular concern. I would suggest we change B to say encourage the member of the board to stop the conduct that they
Alleged.
believe
Conduct.
is in contravention of the code.
Okay. I think that gets to what I was looking for.
Perfect. Anything further in this section, Trustee Williams?
Not at this time. Just like my initial read of some of this, just to like the care in like a slip of a missing word here and there. That's just something I'm sure staff will clean up before this is finalized.
Thank you so much. Trustee King on this section.
Thank you, through you, Chair. To staff, first of all, thank you. It is very nice to see the comments from last meeting very well reflected in the revisions here. I just wanted to jump back to the same area that Trustee McLean had left off regarding the engagement of mediation, so 6.3.6A. And I'm wondering if our expectation is that mediation would only be engaged upon agreement by both parties and the willingness of the recipient. And if that's the case, if that needs to be explicit.
Through the chair, can you just restate the section that you were referring to?
Yes, it's 6.3.6.
Okay.
A.
Thank you very much. Through mediation, all parties have to agree to be involved. They don't have to agree to mediation. Mediation's voluntary. What we had in the earlier section about the pre-complaint procedure, as well, is that it's all voluntary. A chair may initiate the discussion about what about having a third party come in and try to resolve this, or even one of the parties may say, "Hey, what about this?" The two parties that are the complainant and the respondent to complaint will have to agree in order. Well, first of all, in order to initiate the process of getting a mediator, but two, to have a successful mediation or potential for successful mediation. What we can do in here is just to address the comment that you just made about explicitly that the parties have to agree to mediation if that is a process that gets started. Otherwise, we don't go through that process.
Yeah, to make it explicit.
Thank you. I understand that that would be what we'd want to encourage in order for it to be successful. I think that can be assumed, but I do think I would just want to avoid any kind of situation where someone might have an expectation that one party could demand this as an action without agreement for the other, or that it's something that a chair could impose without agreement, especially just considering that there's cost implication as well.
Was there anything else in this section?
No, that
Trustee?
was all. Thank you.
Thank you. May I pass the chair, Trustee McLean? Thank you very much. My concern comes from really the explicit timeline piece, because in the procedures, we don't start off with any timelines. We don't talk about the whole process has to be done within 60 days. Does the informal, so the suggestion that because a complaint can only be made, like I wonder if we need a beginning piece that talks about a complaint has to be made within 60 days. If you do if you wish to take advantage of the 6.2, this would be considered as part of the 60-day process.
Okay.
Like just so it's really clear for someone. And that was actually a note from the chair, because I asked Chair Shan if he could review it, if he had any concerns that came, since a lot of this is he would be dealing with. He said might need more scope, might need more clarity on the scope and timeline of the voluntary period. So I just think maybe at the beginning, there just has to be, should you wish to, or should a complaint be launched, there is, and just maybe quote from the legislation and just make it clear that if you're running close to that 60 days from which the alleged breach occurred, then maybe it must have to go to whatever, if you know what I mean.
Yes.
So thank you for that. The other piece is in this particular section is about well, I guess the mediator is in the other, but yeah, no, if it's clear and the chair wants to reach out, my question is, can the chair reach out to anyone the chair wishes to for advice? Like, does that have to be part of the code? Like, say the chair receives something and the chair's like, gosh, I really need the advice of someone else, or I just have to talk it through with someone. Can the chair do that? Or are there, and it's completely all confidential, but can the chair seek the advice of anyone the chair wishes to, or would there be a prescribed, should the chair wish to discuss even initiating the informal process, they speak to X or Y? I'm just wondering, because that was also a question of the chair.
Through the chair, I normally in a situation, in these type of complaint procedures where there is a pre-complaint informal process, which is very common in many complaint procedures, we don't prescribe what is done at that early stage because it has to be flexible. So in some cases, and there is no restriction. What I would say is, for example, if the chair were to consult with, seek to consult with general counsel, let's say at TDSB, general counsel will likely say it would be not appropriate for staff essentially to provide advice on this particular situation. And so there is no restriction in here. I think it would be up to the chair to decide using their best judgment and maybe some what would be good practices. So for example, let's say the director can provide some advice and say, well, maybe mediation might be good in this situation, and perhaps we can eventually develop a list of potential mediators, who knows? But that's, I would not restrict the chair on this procedure, but through practice, I would encourage, and certainly we can, staff can work to support the chair in finding creative ways to resolve things, and access to resources, access to certain resources, of course. For example, if the chair seeks to seek legal advice, it should be from an external lawyer to the board of trustees.
So if I can just follow up through you, Mr. Chair, are there procedures that will accompany this, or should this document be clear in of itself? Because if this document should be clear in of itself, I'm wondering in 6.2.4, it says the chair on their own initiative may meet with, I wonder if there could be a sentence added there. Just like in 6.2.5, it says that if it involves the chair, the vice chair may carry out at the vice chair's discretion. They may include another member of the board to attend the above meeting. I wonder if we need a line to say at the chair's discretion, they may seek advice. They may seek advice. Maybe leave it at that, just so it's clear that it is discretionary. I think that just might be helpful to put in. I'm not sure if my colleagues think it needs to be more restrictive than that, but I just think that it should be here that, so a chair doesn't say, oh, can I ask somebody else? I just think it should be clear. And then you're right. There would be some learning, and we would go through this with everybody. So people would know who's appropriate, who's not appropriate,
Yep.
et cetera. I'm just wondering for that consideration.
Sure, I agree with that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So we'll go to 6.3 now. I'll go back to, oh, sorry. Trustee Arts, I'm sorry, please, on this section, any comments?
No, I think my couple things that you guys have already addressed. So
Thank you very much. So we'll move on to 6.3, and Trustee McLean, you're up. Anything?
I don't have anything until 6.8.
Okay, Trustee Williams, Trustee King, Trustee Arts, or Trustee Hastings, I believe you're also on line. Anybody have any comments on 6.3?
So through the chair, my question on 6.3 was the crossing out of the ability to mail in the complaint, the notification of alleged breach. I understand it's more convenient to have everything come in through the central email address that's been assigned for this purpose. But for individuals where, you know, that might be a barrier or a challenge, to also have the ability to mail it in. Was there a reason that we struck out the option of mailing it in?
I'll go to staff on that one. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, and thank you for the question. Because of the timeline issue, there is a complication about when the time the complaint is received. So we have tons of litigation on this type of issue on other tribunals. So what I've seen in other rules of procedure for tribunals and the rules of procedure is that they have to deem that the complaint has been received by a certain date, because we don't know when Canada Post will be able to deliver it, right? It's unpredictable. It's not within our control. So if we include mailing, we have to decide on a rule that says when the complaint is considered received by the board. Do we have it as the date on the post date on the envelope? And hopefully we don't throw away the envelope when it's opened. Do we have it a certain day from the date of the post date on the envelope? Our hope was to try to make things a lot simpler, especially when the vast majority of complaints and members, Board of Trustees are able to use the email system. What we wanted to do is to try to make it very simple. If mailing is, if that is the desire of the subcommittee, we can put it back in. But I would ask you to consider to provide some direction on when you deem the complaint is received by the board. Remember, December holidays will delay when we come back, staff come back into the office to receive it and open the envelope and so on, along weekends as well. So we just want to avoid the complication of going through that. Otherwise, this complaint will add another page. Sorry, this procedure will be another page long.
I'm wondering if I can interrupt. I'm wondering if there could be a line like we do often with accessibility issues. If you require an accommodation or an accessible, I don't know what the right language is, but we often do that. Please contact such and such. And I wonder if that would alleviate that concern, Trustee Williams.
Through you, Madam Chair, you actually read my mind. The suggestion of like offering ability to access some kind of accommodation was my next question. Just to be sure it's like equitable and you know, like mitigate barriers. Even one person might experience that barrier. So I appreciate that. And that, I believe that was it for me on this section through the chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Trustee King, anything? Oh, sorry. Mr. Plotnikoff, I believe you wanted to make a comment.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a quick comment while we are in this section. We got some comments from Integrity Commissioner, and this is with regard to section 636C, which is under early complaint resolution process. So this section states, and this is kind of at the end of this early complaint resolution process, states that if the matter is resolved to the satisfaction of the member of the board alleging the breach, the complainant will withdraw their notice of complaint. So the comment was about reference to member of the board, saying that under our process, under this protocol, it's not just the member of the board who may raise the issue, but also staff and members of the public. So instead of then saying member of the board alleging the breach, the suggestion from Integrity Commissioner, and we agree with that, should be to the satisfaction of the complainant. And then the complainant will withdraw the notice of complaint. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. Trustee King, sorry to interrupt you. Please go ahead if you have anything on this section.
Thank you, Chair. I had the same comment as Trustee Williams. I do believe the just having a submission option other than the electronic is important for equitable access. I just questioned whether the accessibility line was quite the right way to address that. I'm not 100% sure that somebody just who's looking for a mail-in option, might clue in that that's the mechanism. So I would just ask to think through the language there so that we're getting at what we would like to. And then that would still require some thinking about the dates that Associate Director Pon had mentioned, because a mail-in option would still be there, and we'd still have to consider whether it's the post date or et cetera. So I don't think we're out of that part of the conversation yet when it comes to procedures. I didn't have anything else.
Thank you very much. Ms. Pond, do you want to respond?
Sure. Thank you very much. And I really appreciate the conversation we're having on making it accessible. Since I oversee the accessibility office, what we normally do with that is to indicate the means in which individuals can communicate feedback. So under the AODA, I don't even know if there's a fax line, but maybe something that we can do is to add, I would imagine, a general number in trustee services as an opportunity for someone who may need to find a different way
If you need support or
filing
something,
it.
please call blah, blah,
Yes,
blah.
and then we can, in the procedure, deem that day, the day of the first contact,
Perfect.
to be it. So if it comes through courier, mail, or drop off, at least it's clear in the procedure what day we've assigned as the day of receipt. Because what we don't want to do is inadvertently, someone who's complaining, they miss out by a day or two because they did not understand the complaint. So that's perhaps something we could do, add a phone number if there is one, hopefully. And
would be
deem the day of the phone call
The initiation.
to be the date.
And how does everyone feel about that? Any comment? Trustee McLean?
Through you, Chair, thank you. I think that's great, and I appreciate the line about the support as well. I think that's a great addition.
Trustee McLean?
Thank you. And through the chair, I think this is a positive step in the right direction. I do, though, think that if we're going to include mail as an option, that it should be registered mail, so that they can't claim that they lost it, or that it got lost, or that, there are mechanisms to track now in the postal system, and also via courier, if they're not inclined to drop it off, or they're not inclined to fax it, or just having it disappear, which
It could.
that A happens, and B could be someone could make the claim, the assertion,
Sure.
and buy a lot of time. And
Thank you. Thank you.
Very good suggestion.
If I can pass the chair to you, Trustee McLean. I'm still not sure. Can anyone in the world make a complaint? Because I wonder if that needs to be clarified right up front, like a staff member of the TDSB,
Mhm.
a member of the public within the TDSB or within Toronto, because I noticed on the form that it said blank for city and then Ontario.
Mhm.
And I know that obviously some of our staff don't live in Toronto, so I get why we do that. But I'm wondering if, and I don't know how my colleagues feel about this, but I don't think we should take complaints from people who don't elect us or are in the, who we are not accountable to, I guess is my perspective. Others may have other perspectives.
So
That's my perspective.
through the chair, under section 3 definitions, staff member means employee of the TDSB.
Okay, thank
Let's say it's an employee of a contractor who's not an employee of TDSB, they would then fall into the public category. And we don't have a definition of public in this procedure, but this is something, again, that the trustees can consider to make a process that's perhaps a lot more efficient and effective. Right now, it is anyone in the globe who can file something. And really only the integrity commissioner at that point will have to determine if it's late, frivolous, bad faith, and vexatious, and so on. So if there's a desire to carve out a more precise definition of the public, that is something that we can add to the to the complaint procedure.
Thank you. I would like that, but that's just my comment. I will pass. I will take the chair back and I will pass it for others to comment. Trustee McLean.
Thank you. And through the chair, I'm good with the concept that we limit the scope of who could. But I also kind of recognize the TDSB's leadership role, and a lot of people look for us and follow the direction that we set. So does if a member of the public lived outside the jurisdiction, wherever we draw that, would they automatically be excluded, or would they have the opportunity to reach out to a trustee on the board, which is kind of where this whole thing started initially, to be able to say, I think there was a problem, and if the trustee agreed and thought it was worth pursuing, is that still possible? Or does the fact that the person lives in Ajax in itself, make it, that they can't enter the process? I'm asking.
May I answer? My perspective is I'm not accountable to them in my elected position. I do not believe, I guess I'm just conscious of the amount of hate I get from all over the world. And I don't believe that this is a code of conduct as a trustee for the Toronto District School Board. I signed my oath for the Toronto District School Board. I will be judged by those within the Toronto District School Board. I do not believe I should be judged by anyone outside of Toronto. That's just my personal, but if my colleagues disagree, no problem. I'd like to reach consensus on it so we don't have this issue. But I find it, yeah, we can model for the entire world, but I'm not accountable to them. They do not elect me. And it's a code of conduct as a trustee in the Toronto District School Board. But others may feel differently, and I defer to that. I just feel like, just like I don't think we should hear delegations from people outside of TDSB, because they go to somewhere else if they want something else. These are policies for us. But others, I'm interested. Let me pass the chair back to you, Trustee McLean, so you can ask the others since it's my issue.
Okay. Does anybody else want to be heard on this?
I think Trustee Arts has her hand up, but I can go next.
Okay, Trustee Williams, you can go now, and Trustee Arts, if yours pertains to this, I'll go to you next.
Okay, so thank you, and through the chair, I think I'm leaning in favor that the public be defined within the jurisdiction of the Toronto District School Board, the jurisdiction of the City of Toronto. My thoughts on that are that makes sense. I'm willing to hear, arguments for or in support or not, but it makes sense to me. Kind of like to mitigate the possibility of just the public being so broad that, as Leola mentioned, extending to the whole globe, basically. So I'm leaning in favor of defining the public within the jurisdiction of the Toronto District School Board, the City of Toronto, however it's going to be worded. Thank you. Those are my comments through the chair.
Thank you, Trustee Williams. Trustee Arts, did your hand pertain to this?
Yes. So I agree with Shelley in terms of clearly defining who's our public. And like that needs to be across all our different protocols, because Mantrika can attest to, we ran into this issue with the delegate from Ottawa who wanted to comment on something, and we said no, and then sent Mantrika a very nasty response. That we have to clearly define who we're beholden to, and who we're not. For 6.3 for this whole section, so yes, the comments about accessibility, I think in general, like we have lots of people for a variety of different reasons who call into the trustee office rather than sending emails. Like they find TDSB's phone number, they call, they get their contact through that way. So I think that we do, whether it's defined in the individual sections or we have a general section that is support and accommodations, that we have a variety of mechanisms for people to intake, I guess, both for the informal and the formal. That if somebody calls and says, I want to explore a complaint, I need help, that we have identified a mechanism to do that, as opposed to making it up after the fact. And just in 6.3, I guess for both 6.2 and 6.3, but especially for 6.3, my primary concern with, I guess, the accessibility is that some of the pieces for the public to use are fairly legalese, and I don't mind personally the legalese, but it would be nice if there was also clarification that is very where the language is very lay. So I highlighted 6.3.3E, like provisions of the code of conduct allegedly breached. I just find that one's what do you mean? Like, I should find that. I understand how to fill that out, but I don't know that that is lay enough or clear enough. So just a scan that that yes, the public is going to be using this document, and it should be worded as much as possible to be public facing. And I say thank you. I actually have to go for 1 o'clock to another set of meetings. So I will duck out soon.
Okay, thank you, Trustee Arts. And now we'll go to Trustee King. And I just want to be cognizant of who's chairing and who shouldn't be. So I'm going to ask you to initially if you have questions as it pertains to the question of, jurisdiction, in which case I'll chair for that. And anything broader than that, I'll return the chair to Trustee Laskin.
For you, Chair McLean, my comment is regarding jurisdiction. So agree with defining public, agree that for the most part, it should be the City of Toronto. But for the sake of thinking thoroughly, I've thought of a couple of exceptions where folks from outside of Toronto might legitimately interact with our system. Whether international representatives, guest speakers, program providers that might come from, again, outside of City of Toronto proper, but might spend time and interact with the board. I think these are rare, and I hope that they would not occur, but the purpose of having the procedure is in case they do. So I would just ask that we think about those possibilities as exceptions to coming from City of Toronto exclusively.
Thank you. And Associate Director Pond wanted to respond.
Thank you very much. And I should have stated from the very beginning that I want to thank Vitaly Plotnikov for all of the work that he's done. It's not me, it's him. So thank you, Vitaly. And he has also identified, we have a provision in our delegation procedure, actually, that does provide a limitation or at least a bit of a jurisdiction scope that I think will be very helpful based on the conversation we've had. It says delegations are open to members of the TDSB community, open bracket, including parents, guardians, caregivers, students, and volunteers, close brackets, comma, residents of the City of Toronto, comma, and individuals or organizations serving the TDSB community. And I think that captures all the concerns that were raised. So if anything, we would align the definition of public to our delegation procedure.
Okay, thank you. Trustee King, does that conclude what you wanted to share as it pertained to this?
It does. Thank you.
Thank you. And with that, I'll return the chair to Trustee Laskin.
Thank you very much. Trustee Arts, because you have to leave shortly, did you have any comments in the rest of the document?
Not particularly. I will email anything else if I thought I missed it.
Thank you so much. So 6.3, I think we've exhausted. We're on to 6.4. Trustee McLean.
So I'm good, Madam Chair, until we get to 6.8.
Thank you. Does anybody have anything they'd like to remark on 6.4, 6.5, 6.6, or 6.7 until we get to 6.8? I'll go to Trustee King.
Sorry, slow on the unmute. No, nothing for me.
Thank you, Trustee Williams.
Thank you to you, Madam Chair. I had no comments on those sections. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee McLean. If I can pass it back to you.
Yeah, thank you. Go ahead.
Thank you. On 6.7, the appeal process, I'm really not clear. 6.7.1. So it's the board or the member whose conduct was the subject can appeal the sanctions imposed or both. And the board and the member are the parties of such an appeal. So even if the board doesn't appeal and the member appeals, the board is still party to that appeal?
Correct.
So can we change it that only the board can appeal them? Because if the board is automatically a party, if a member appeals and the board doesn't want to appeal, it takes the onus from the board. I'm just asking the question, unless I'm reading that incorrectly. But it seems like we don't have to agree to the appeal as a board, but if a member appeals it, we're still subject to it.
Through the chair, first of all, the language is from the regulation, so we don't have a lot of flexibility. But yeah, if one of the parties, the board or the member initiates that process, the other party has no choice, or I mean, they have a choice, but you would want to defend and be a party to the process.
Okay, so just to clarify, and this was a question from the chair.
Mhm.
So the appeal is only possible, is the appeal only possible through board motion?
Through the chair, that is a good question because it's not directed in the regulation for that. My recommendation is that the board have some sort of internal process to make sure that this is a decision of the board and not an individual trustee.
So can we then add something to 6.7 to make that clear?
By resolution?
And then the other question is, what about if either of the parties don't like the board vote? But I don't understand that because the board would only vote to appeal. So forget that one. So that doesn't make, but I guess, so the question is the appeal only possible through board motion? And do we need some sort of procedure or something in here that clarifies the appeal? How a member makes the appeal or how the board makes the appeal?
Mm-hmm.
But regardless, it seems like if you say this is right from the legislation, that the board doesn't have to agree to the appeal, but if a member wants to appeal, there has to be some mechanism to appeal.
So through the chair, the notice of appeal would be filed with a body that the ministry establishes outside. So let's say I'm a trustee, a number of complaints have been alleged against me. Integrity Commissioner finds that I breached and imposes a sanction. I don't agree with it. I will file a notice of appeal. I have not seen anything from the Ministry of Education about what that process would look like. So the individual member like me, who is the person who is being complained of, there's no internal process within a board to do that. It's that person submitting their notice to the ministry's process to start that process. If the entire board, let's say the Integrity Commissioner did not find that there was a breach, but the entire board believes that there was one and wants to appeal it, my sense there should be a resolution by the board, passed by a majority of the board, so that the notification of the appeal to the ministry's appeal process can in fact be done. And so I don't know if that clarifies that process.
Trustee McLean.
Sorry, do I have the chair? Who has the chair?
Oh, sorry. You have the chair.
I have lots of questions. I just, if you're done, then I'm going to wander into this because
I'm
I got
done.
all kinds of,
I'm done. I will take the chair back. Please go ahead.
okay. And through you. It never dawned on me that through this process that the integrity commissioner would conclude that a breach hadn't occurred and that the board would then appeal that. Like I made no, and I didn't see that coming at all. Not entirely sure how I feel about that, but if you're telling me that the ministry wants that to be part of then that's how that goes. But I'm also very uncomfortable with the concept that we create an expectation that if one of our colleagues is convicted, or that's the wrong word, but is found to be in breach, and something is consequences are afforded, that there's this assumption that the other 21 of us are going to be expected to be the cavalry and ride over the hill and launch a complaint and us to carry the legal expenses associated with that, as opposed to the party. That this becomes, I'm less comfortable with this whole concept. Like I don't want to, I'm not really looking for the board to have a mechanism. If the individual feels that they've been, they're not happy with the ruling they got and the trustee wants to go forward and challenge that, then I think it's great that there's another mechanism in place for that. But the concept that the board is going to have to wander in and do this and own the expenses associated with all of that, I'm personally uncomfortable with. And I don't know where that leaves it. Well, I don't know what to do with that, but that's where I sit.
Thank you, Trustee McLean. So to be clear, the legislation says it's either the board or the member. So we didn't add that in. So the issue is your preference would be just to be silent on the mechanism and we'll get there if we have to get there.
So the board then would, if I'm understanding this correctly, and the board, we have to leave it so that the board has an option that the board's will would be determined by majority vote of the board? Is that, would it take a
I'm
2/3
assuming-
majority? Would it take a simple majority, a 2/3 majority?
Through the chair, because the regulations, okay, well, first of all, the regulation says the board or the member whose conduct being complained of can appeal. They do not talk about resolution, majority, 2/3, 99%, it doesn't matter. I think if you build an internal process that as a board you're comfortable with to get to the point of whether you want to do it. So for example, I can imagine, let's say a trustee who's not happy with the integrity commissioner's finding may put a motion forward to seek an appeal, and then maybe that starts the process. And then whether you have simple majority or 2/3, it's really up to this committee to make a recommendation on how that works.
If I just might add, and I'll go back to Trustee McLean, right now it's a simple majority. The board votes to accept or reject an integrity commissioner's sanction. And the history of this board has been, for the most part, it's a real split. Some not, some yes. So I'm not, so it seems to me, since that's been the precedent in terms of just receiving an integrity commissioner, we kind of have been through that, Trustee McLean, in terms, so I see this as kind of no different. The integrity commissioner makes a ruling. Now the board doesn't, it's not a recommendation to the board, it's a ruling. So would the board appeal that as easily as when they recommend something to us? I don't know the answer to that. But I think the issue is if it's in the legislation that we do have to consider how we would do that.
Through the chair, if I could just add what may help guide landing a decision on this is to think about the overall purpose of a code of conduct and the integrity commissioner process, right? Accountability, transparency, our service to the students and to our school communities, like what would uphold our accountability in this particular case. So I would recommend a simple majority to make things a little simpler, to be honest. But again, it really should start with at least one member making the motion.
Trustee McLean, anything further on that?
Yeah, through you, I mean, I'm prepared to go with where the group wants, but I think this whole concept that is this whole thing that's being forced upon us is a byproduct of boards not accepting the recommendation of the facts that the integrity commissioners made and routinely, you know, kind of suggesting that we're going to go independently and protect our own, so to speak. So I'd be more inclined if that the higher threshold for me, I think is better, but I'm certainly, you know, I want to hear from colleagues and happy to go with the, you know, thank you.
Thank you very much. So the question is whether it should be a 2/3 majority or a simple majority. Trustee Williams or Trustee King, do you have an opinion?
So through you, Madam Chair, I think I just need some more clarity about the appeal process from staff. So what is being discussed and proposed here is around having a motion brought to board, either you know, the member of the board who's subject to the complaint or the appeal. But what if it's a situation where the board is not interested in an appeal, but the member, like the member of the board who's subject to the complaint, does want to appeal? By doing it by way of motion, you're like, this is the question for staff. Essentially, you're taking away the ability of that member of the board to appeal.
No, it's just if the board joins the appeal. The member can always appeal. At least maybe, sorry, Associate Director Pong, can you clarify that?
Yeah, through the chair, I just want to make it very clear. We are only focusing on the board. If the board wishes to appeal, the member who is the subject of the complaint, if they're not happy with the integrity commissioner determination, they have the ability on their own, accord, to file an appeal if they wish. It does not require any vote or anything. The only side of the equation that we're talking about is if the board believes they don't like the decision of the integrity commissioner, then the board can launch a complaint. So it's two separate, appeal. It's two separate processes that we're talking about. So it would not inhibit the member who is the subject of the complaint from filing an appeal.
So that's, I believe Trustee Williams' concern is 6.7.2 makes it seem like the member of the board will not vote on the board resolution. It doesn't, I think those two need something in between them to make it clear that the member can always appeal, that 6.7.2 is only if the board appeals, because I can see your confusion, Trustee Williams.
Through you, Madam Chair. Yeah, I just need a bit more clarity on that, because it was just stated that this is about the board's ability to appeal, or the board's appealing the decision. Where does the member of the board who's subject of the complaint, where is their avenue of appealing?
So potentially there's the 6.7.2 should be if the member wishes to appeal, they do this. And then 6.7.2 is if the board wishes to appeal, then the member whose conduct does not vote. Like I absolutely see the point.
Mhm. Yeah, thank you. Through the chair, if staff could maybe clarify like how that would be, divvied up or made more clear.
Through the chair, we will adjust the language accordingly to make it a lot more clear. Thank you.
On the issue as if the board chooses to appeal, whether it's simple majority or 2/3, an opinion and any opinion?
Simple majority. I'm in favor of the simple majority piece.
Thank you. Thank you. Trustee King?
Through you, Chair. Yeah, I was thinking through a couple of thoughts on here, and I do think there's value to the board being able to appeal. I know that's not our decision, but just to be specific, one of the concerns that repeatedly came up in the last few months as we've discussed this, especially around racialized groups, is that we don't know who the pool of integrity commissioners will be. We don't have any control in identifying who they are. And one of the concerns was the depth of knowledge and lens they would have in terms of human rights, culturally responsive, those kinds of pieces that might be part of a complaint. So I do think that there may be times where as a board, not that we might not like what comes back, but we might not be in agreement or feel that it has the lens we would have liked. I don't know where that leaves me on the simple majority or the 2/3 majority, because I think there's also an element here of not necessarily wanting to encourage the behavior of constant appeals to a decision. So I'm a little bit stuck there, and I think I would defer to however colleagues are feeling, and it sounds like the simple majority is what's being favored.
Thank you very much. Trustee McLean, may I pass the chair to you?
Please.
To your point, Trustee King, you weren't on the board at the time, but that was exactly my concern with the Integrity Commissioner's recommendation on Trustee Alexandra Loca-Rotman. The advice that was sought to support the Integrity Commissioner's decision was from a firm that had blatantly made comments in the past, and there was a concern of bias. So I take your point to heart that depending on who is doing the determination and their lived experience and or their knowledge can be problematic going forward. So I just wanted to make that comment. I'll pass it. I'll take the chair back. Do you need anything else from us, Associate Director Pon or Vitalia? You're listening.
Through the chair, no, I really again appreciate the approach the trustees have taken in this process to have it more conversational, and as we've had multiple iterations, but as you can imagine, it's the language is very tricky. And so what I probably would ask is if you would like us to come back again with another draft or incorporate everything that we've heard and seen, make the relevant changes to the code of conduct to make sure they align and bring it forward as a report to, I just want to make sure the procedure, bring it forward as a report to the GPC.
Right. I think we're still not quite finished yet because I think there are comments on 6.8, but
Yep.
I'll let my colleagues speak first before I give an opinion. Trustee McLean?
Yeah, I'm happy that, I mean, it's certainly been my experience that our comments have been heard, incorporated. I have no reason to believe that that won't be happening here. So I'm good with it going straight to GPC following.
This meeting today.
Yeah.
Thank you. Trustee King or Trustee Williams?
Through you, Chair, I'm fine with that as well.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Trustee-
Thank you through the chair. I'm fine with that as well.
Thank you very much. So
Thank
now
you.
I'll go to 6.8. Trustee McLean, you had some comments.
I do. Thank you. This is about the monetary, the costs and reimbursement and whatnot. So if I'm the trustee and the integrity commissioner found that I was in breach, that I couldn't apply for assistance. If I appeal and the appeal goes my way and concludes that there was no breach, does the trustee get reimbursement at both levels for their expenses? Or do they not get the integrity commission, that level of legal that they chased because the integrity, like, does that second ruling apply to both and all the costs that led up to that?
Associate Director, please.
Thank you very much. So normally these type of payment of legal costs provisions are really to assist a defendant, a respondent to complaints, right? So because potential significant consequences could occur. And so in section 6.8.3, costs will only be reimbursed under this section to the member of the board if the IC or the appeal panel concludes that there has been no contravention of the code of conduct by the member. I would wait until the final process, the final step is taken before reimbursement is determined by the board. Because ultimately there could be different decisions at each step. So IC could make a decision one way, the appeal board a different way, and then divisional court can make another decision another way. Because ultimately entitlement to the reimbursement is if essentially you're successful, right? You've been found not in breach of the code of conduct.
So it would apply to all then through you, Madam Chair?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so I understand that. And now I'm going to wander into, I'm not necessarily excited about this from I want to get to where the spirit of this starts to get to. If the integrity commissioner, and I'll use myself just so that, I've been found to be in breach, and they have assigned penalties. And I appeal, and the appeal board concludes that I was in breach, but the penalties were too harsh. Then I would argue that not necessarily the expenses in the initial session, because I was still found to be in breach, but potential relief from the secondary set of expenses chasing the appeal would be reasonable, because the reality changed, the landscape changed. Like, the ruling I thought was harsh, the committee felt was harsh, and trying to, so the threshold doesn't necessarily have to be not guilty, so to speak. If the appeal board were to move in your direction and alter the ruling of the integrity commissioner, then I would think that that would be a success and worthy of, or at least I'm suggesting that we should consider whether we're willing to support that.
Through the chair, so this section is not related in any way to any regulation, so you can develop it in any way you want. The way it's currently worded, which is adopted from our old code of conduct, is only if reimbursement, only if there is a finding that there has been no breach of the code of conduct. So if you're partially successful in reducing the sanction, that would not qualify for a reimbursement under this particular language. If you want to adjust the language, say that if there's a partial success, I don't know how you would determine what amount is given or not. It's a lot easier if it's yes or no, as opposed to you were partially successful. So if the board wishes to maybe have a provision that allows a little bit of discretion for reimbursement on something, then that's something that can be added in here. But it does, it will require quite a bit of discussion amongst the board Because
Objective.
what is the criteria for determining 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 or so on? So right now it's breach or no breach.
Okay, and through you, Madam Chair, before the integrity committee would come and we would decide, and they would come with recommendations, and the board they weren't binding. The board would decide that, and we quite often have decided that the recommendations were harsh or out of line, or,
Follow the
we
recommendation.
didn't follow the recommendations. So I'm thinking that logic being applied here, I'm not following that all the way through. For me, it's as simple as if the appeal changes the ruling, like if they changed the either that there was a breach or there wasn't a breach, or the consequences for the breach, that would be, in my estimation, successful. And for me, I think would meet my burden of what I think this provision is designed to do. If we're going to say that under some circumstances, we're going to cover some of the costs for our colleagues justly trying to protect their rights. And if you follow that through, ultimately the appeal community said there was something to be heard here and adjusted accordingly, then this provision, I think the spirit of what it serves to do would follow with that from my perspective. And I'll let others wonder.
Thank you very much. Trustee Williams or Trustee King?
Thank you, through the chair. I'm kind of split on the consideration of this, whether there should be some reimbursement for partial consideration of an appeal. The whole point of all of this is, the code of conduct, breach of the code of conduct. So I'm still mulling over how the sanctions should be considered in all of this. My initial impulse or thought on it is that it should be around whether there was a breach or there was no breach, the final determination of that. So that's probably not helpful, but I'm still considering like all the aspects of this at this point.
Thank you. Trustee King?
My colleague has waded us somewhere where I'm not sure I know how to swim out of. So now I'm thinking about someone that might appeal, feeling that yes, they recognize and accept there was a breach, but are appealing because they actually felt the sanction was overreaching or too harsh. And they might follow through an appeal process for that. And if that's found to be valid, then I would feel like something was due. This gets very contextual, I think, is where I'm getting for me. So to the associate director's point, maybe having something that just gives some leeway for some consideration of context may be helpful.
Thank you very much. Can I pass the chair? Trustee McLean?
Please.
Thank you. For me, it's not. I feel they either breached or they didn't breach. I don't think the penalty really, frankly, from a trustee perspective, does the penalty really matter if I'm found in breach? Whether they give me missing 3 days of private session or having to give something back, that's not the thing that's going to define it for me. It's whether I breached the code or I didn't breach the code. The sanctions for me, I mean, they can't fire me completely. They can give me some penalties, but the issue is whether those penalties I see as harsh or not harsh is very secondary to whether or not they determine I breached or I didn't breach. So my position is legal expenses should only be reimbursed. They should not, I do not believe the signal of the board should be, well, they lowered your penalty a little bit, but they still found you in breach. We'll give you partial reimbursement. I think that goes against the principle of the code of conduct. That's just my personal opinion. And I think the issue here is whether you breach or you didn't breach, and the board should not be considering the penalties issues. I think the appeal process is breach or didn't breach, but that's just my opinion. So I'm not sure where we landed. Associate Director, we leave it to you.
The power.
No, I think Vitaly, actually, please offer your words of wisdom. We would appreciate it very much.
Thank you, Madam Chair, or Mr. Chair at this point. I see Trustee Williams has a hand up. Maybe I'll wait for that comment first. Thank you.
Sorry, Trustee Williams, please go ahead.
Thank you. And through the chair, it was just like just an additional comment about the sanctions. Being successful on mitigating the sanctions, I think, is also like something, something. So that's like part of my thought process in this. I'm looking at the breach or no breach. This is about the code of conduct, but just appealing like the sanctions piece and being successful on that is something, especially in consideration of one of these sanctions is 25% of the honorarium. Like if it went to that extent. So that's gaining something back, or that's something that shouldn't have been taken away in the first place, you know, as determined by the appeal. So those were just a couple of my, thoughts, and looking forward to hearing staff's further input on this.
Mr. Plotnikoff, please go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My comment actually is very technical, and it refers to section 681, which says subject to subsection 684. And if you look, there is no section 684. We meant to say 683. So just as we are here on this section, just to make sure that everyone is clear and not confused with the numbers. And we'll adjust that at the next version. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Trustee McLean.
Well, we seem to be divided, and
Normal.
that's not a bad thing. That in itself isn't a bad thing. And usually when it gets to the penalty stage that's where we get divided. So that's in itself not particularly problematic. I will say, though, I do think there's probably a compromise here, in that you could suggest that, 50%, for example, up to a half of this, so that you would suggest that it's not, you don't fully get the ability to try to recoup your costs because you're still found to be in breach, but there's an opportunity to get a partial back if the appeal body determines, that they have in essence ruled in your favor and that there's been modification. So I just think that there is a middle ground if we want it. I'm not sure that we want it, but I do think it's out there.
Thank you, Trustee McLean. I think that it seems like through consensus, the middle ground, it seems like some degree of flexibility is warranted. I think, as we've done with the others, staff have heard the conversation and maybe can add a 6.8.4.
See, we were ahead of our time.
Exactly, you were anticipating, so that, and we can land there.
Through the chair, if I can suggest, if I think I understand the comment right now, we can add a 6.8.4, leave room for discretion, trustees will have to determine anyway. So the original language of the reimbursement is up to 5,000, up to 10,000. So it's really a subject of debate amongst the trustees anyways. And so if we have that with a bit of a maximum, like 50% or something like that,
Perfect.
and the discretion is still there.
So
So
it's already
in
there.
your meeting, you can debate the bona fides of, yes
Sure.
or no, then that's up to you.
Thank you. Then I don't think we need a 6.8.4 because the understanding is it's up to. So there is the issue though, is that, isn't there language here that says only if a breach is not found though?
We will, through the chair, just change the language to make sure that it's clear.
Perfect.
It's for the sanction part of it.
That's great. Then that's, I think then that's great. This has been a great discussion. Are there any other comments before, on this code of conduct? And I really think it's been a really great collaborative with staff on working to the best interests of the board. Anything further from anyone? Then we need a motion to approve as amended or as discussed, or what would that appropriate language be?
Through the chair, I'm just thinking on the spot, approve with amendments as discussed.
Approved with amendments as discussed. Trustee McLean is making that. Trustee King or Trustee Williams?
Well, second.
Trustee Wills. Okay.
Consensus, we all support that. Thank you very much, Trustee Williams. Trustee Williams. And then all in favor, and with sincere gratitude to staff. Thank you. We'll move on to 5.2, which you can find on page 61, Associate Director. Or is this Mr. Plotnikoff?
I'll start. Thank you. And I should apologize. There were 3 different PowerPoints I was working on. So there was no PowerPoint on the most recent complaint procedure. So my apologies to mention the board staff. But there is a PowerPoint procedure on, PowerPoint on this new electronic participation, which we've renamed to hopefully accurately capture what it's really all about. And so if we could start that, thank you. All right, so we actually started with renaming the procedure because electronic meetings did not really tell the story of, your need to participate in a meeting and attend. So we added the word attendance and participation. So attendance showing up for the meeting, and participation also is those who are maybe not members of the committee, but can also participate and so on. And also staff, also covers staff. The changes to the regulation requires in-person attendance for regular board meetings and regular committee of the whole meetings effective September 1st. So we are, working early to have this in place. And so it does support the requirements of the regulation as stated there. Next slide, please. And remember, the mandatory in-person requirement attendance is only for regular board meetings, so not special board meetings, and regular committee of the whole meetings. There is some debate about what committee of the whole means, but we'll talk about that later on. And in addition, there are requirements of the Education Act regulation that for every meeting, there has to be a minimum number of people in attendance in person. This is to enable members of the public to come in and observe the meetings if they wish. So for the board is at least the chair or designate and one trustee, and then the director or designate has to be. Committee meetings. So we talked about that. For committee meetings, the committee chair or the designate, and the director or designate. So 2 people in essence have to be in the meeting. I just want to make sure that there's a refresher on there. The committee chair or the designate for a committee meeting may participate electronically if another member of the committee who is also a member of the board is physically present in the meeting room. Again, to make sure that the meetings are open to members of the public and there's at least one trustee in the room. Thank you. Next slide. There is, with the requirement for in-person attendance, there are very strict requirements to seek pre-approval, to not have to attend in person and to allow you to attend electronically. So a member of the board may request to attend a regular meeting of the board or a regular committee of the whole meeting electronically before the meeting begins. The regulation does not require a certain minimal timeline, 24 hours in advance, 1 week in advance, or so on. For now, what we are suggesting is any time before the meeting starts, especially if someone falls ill. That can happen usually fairly suddenly, so we want to kind of leave that open. Under the regulation, the request in writing must be sent to the chair, or the vice chair if the chair is the one who's making the request. And the request has to indicate one of the following reasons why they seek to be exempted from having to attend in person for a regular meeting or a regular committee of the whole meeting. And so you'll see the list there. I think you would see distance, of course, is a potential issue. Weather conditions for safety reasons, health-related issues, a disability of the trustee that makes it challenging for that trustee to be physically present in the meeting. And then family responsibilities. And please do note that the regulation has a list of who the family members are. So third cousins don't apply, but your parent, spouse, and so on does, and child. Again, it has to be done before the meeting begins. So we've left as much flexibility as possible. There is always a requirement to have one member of the board and the chair of the board in the room present. So if the request to be excused from attending in person means the very last trustee who can attend in person, that approval cannot be allowed, unfortunately. I don't think we'll have an issue at this board, to be honest with that. And if requested by the chair, the vice chair will not, if the chair is the one who's making the request, the vice chair will not approve the request unless the chair's designate is physically present in the room. Next slide, please. So these are changes under the regulation, very significant changes. So if the member does not obtain the approval of the chair in advance of the meeting occurring to be excused from in-person attendance, there are a couple of things. So 6.61A, this is already in the Education Act. You're already familiar with this. So they will, the trustee will vacate their seat automatically if they are absent from 3 consecutive regular board meetings without resolution of the board to authorize their absence. So that's already, it has been in the Education Act for some time. So 3 meetings in a row of the regular board meeting. And then also now B is the new one to reflect the changes. They fail to be physically present at a regular meeting or committee of the whole meeting unless their request to attend electronically is pre-approved by the chair. So very important. Next slide, please. We have added a staff, a practice that we have engaged in on and off, but I think is really good governance and board practice, especially to make sure that your oath to confidentiality or requirement for confidentiality is addressed. So we've proposed a new section that members of the board and student trustees who attend via video conference, they are expected to turn their cameras on during a meeting in private session. So not in public session, private session, and ensure that the meeting is not audible to individuals who are not in the meeting. We've had concerns in the past. We've also had an issue with a student-related matter that required full attention of the board. So we want to incorporate this in writing in the in our governance practices so that it's transparent to all the trustees that this is a requirement. It was happening on an ad hoc basis at the discretion of the chair. We want to codify it in here. Next slide, please. So we, as I mentioned earlier, we thought leaving a maximum amount of time to enable a trustee to seek a request from the chair to be excused from in-person attendance. Should there be a requirement to have when should a trustee be required to submit the request, and when must this approval be obtained? I just wanted to make sure that the trustees can provide us a little bit of guidance on this particular piece.
Thank you. Should we stop there for discussion then?
Yep.
Thank you. Trustees, Trustee McLean.
Thank you, and through the chair. I chair FBEC. I've been the only trustee in the room. If I want to raise a question, I give it the chair to one of my colleagues online. Is it the position of the policy that should nature call and I have to leave the room, that we have to call a recess until I return?
Yes, through the chair, there has to be one
Just a-
trustee in the room
Okay,
at all times.
so if one has to leave and you're the only one,
Call a
you
caucus.
call a
and-
recess
Yeah.
and then you.
Sorry, recess, yeah.
Okay, no, I just wanted to understand. So I meet the criteria that I can't attend in person that was shared. So and this is even before we get to when, but I applied in advance. The chair says, we get that. Is there still a hybrid option available to me to participate? Because I'm 126 kilometers away and I still want to participate, but like,
Yep.
is that still a?
Through the chair, I just want to make clear the pre-approval is for you to be able to participate electronically, not to be absent from the meeting, right? So you'll still be in the meeting and you can still do it by Zoom, 126 kilometers away, but you still need the approval of the chair to not attend in person.
Okay,
For board or for committee of the whole.
Yeah.
right. And is there a reason why members have to have their cameras on? Like, is there?
Just for private.
Right, but I was wondering why that was, I guess. Like, we're all here, we're all present, you can see us. Like, if the logic is that we're all here and we're all going to be, then why the people who have a reason to be away, that's fine, you get to be away, but
You should
should
still-
you not have to put your camera on and be open to the same? I'm asking, like, I'm just trying to understand.
Through the chair, this is not unusual for certain boards of directors to require that the video be on, partly due to confidentiality, and that's why we've limited it to private meetings, but also to ensure we have quorum, continued quorum, to ensure that the member is engaged in the meeting. Unfortunately, what we're seeing around the world is through video attendance at board meetings. People log on, turn off the video, and do something else, and they're recorded as being in attendance when in fact they're not. So to me, your responsibilities as a member of the board or as a board of directors and so on, you're fettering that responsibility by not really engaging in the meeting. So that's why being present in the meeting and being actively engaged in the meeting, one way of doing that is making sure that the video remains on. Again, this is not required in law, but this is something that we are proposing as a strong, good governance practice.
Can I just seek clarification from you, Trustee McLean? So in 6.5.6, it says they are expected to turn their cameras on during private. But in 6.5.4, it says are advised to turn their cameras on if possible when speaking. Is your suggestion that there should be no difference and whether you're in public or, whether it's a regular meeting or a private meeting, the language should be members of the board and student trustees who attend a video conference are expected to turn their cameras on during a meeting? Is that your recommendation? Is that what you're getting at?
Certainly the committee of the whole and the committee of the,
And the board?
and the committee of the board and the board. I'm not sure it needs to wander all the way down to the community meetings, but the big pieces that we're all expected to be here and be accountable for, that makes sense to me. And the last one, okay, sorry.
No, I was just going to park that right now because that's not specific to this question, but we'll come back to it.
And the last one, when should the trustee be required to submit the approval? I think anything up to an hour before, if I'm sick the day of, I mean, it can't be that I needed to ask for 48 hours for, the window to close 48 hours. If you become ill during the day, I think it's reasonable that you have the ability to get the required approval. So, like an hour, I think meets what I think is a reasonable threshold.
Thank you. On this particular item, Trustee King, Trustee Williams?
Through you, Chair, a couple of thoughts. So I do feel that if somebody has the advance notice, they should be submitting that as soon as possible. And I think it should also be recognized and authorized or responded to as soon as possible.
Acknowledged.
Thank you. So that if it's not authorized, that they have the time frame to make alternate arrangements or do what they need to do. So I think that should be respected. And then I do think there needs to be consideration for day of emergency type changes. And I would argue that even within that hour time frame, as somebody who travels by TTC, for instance, I could have all the best intentions, give the buffer of time, still end up in a delay, and maybe find myself, just far enough away, but not able to get physically to the meeting. How do I, if it's 15 minutes from start time, I need the ability to communicate that and have that acknowledged as well.
So two things there, just if I can clarify. So there's a difference between advanced planning, like if one knows in advance, versus day of, and the criteria for having to write it, send it in writing. If you're on the TTC or if you're in a car stuck in a traffic jam, there's a consideration that one couldn't do that in writing. So that would be, so I think what you're raising is 2 points. One is under regular circumstances, there should be an availability of notice if you know in advance. The other is in an emergency situation or in the day of situation up into an hour, but the consideration has to be one might not be able to do that in writing. Is
Chair, correct? Yes.
Thank you very much. Trustee Williams, anything on this?
Thank you, and through the chair. I just had like one question of clarification. There was mention of the private session and student trustees. Are there circumstances where our student trustees would be in a private session?
Through the chair, under the Education Act, Section 207(1). Sorry, it's been a while. Student trustees are allowed to attend private session except for items under subsection B, which is personal, private, financial, confidential information.
That's why we do part A and part B of private session.
Yeah, so you may notice when we do private agendas, we split it between part A and part B, and one of the parts is just for regular trustees, and then the other part is if student trustees are allowed. So there is an ability for them to attend certain items for private session.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that reminder. Yeah, I just reiterate the consideration of that splitting out of the day of emergency situations that could arise when folks are in transit, because I find myself in that situation on occasion. I think that was it for me through the chair. Those were my comments and questions at this point.
Thank you very much. May I pass the chair, Trustee McLean? I have a couple concerns. What if the chair's not available an hour before the meeting and you're writing them? How do you know? So is there an alternate number? Is there a, just like we have for the code of conduct, submitting it to something, is there an email that we would be sending it to? Not necessarily the chair's email, but an email of someone in trustee services that could get it to the chair? Like I'm just,
Didn't we just determine though, trustee Laskin, that you might be, if you were on the TTC, you might not be able to send that same?
but you still might be able to call, like not write, but you might be able to call. I mean, there are parts of the TTC, you're right, that you have no Wi-Fi to.
Right.
But that's my, I'm just asking about the chair's availability, number one. Number two, what if the chair hates you and doesn't want to, even though it's legitimate that you're asking, says no? Like, what's the recourse of a trustee who's denied, where the chair says no? No, I don't, you shouldn't go to Florida. You can't call in. Or, I don't believe you. Like, I don't know, I'm making that up. I believe that the chair will always have good intentions, but I'm just asking the question, what is a trustee's recourse if they're denied? Through you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, well, I could, staff want to take a swing, like,
Through the chair, I hate to say this, but
You have none.
there are judicial review applications. Like it's just unfortunate that that's the way the regulation has been written. I would, of course, recommend to trustees to plan as early as possible. I personally do think maybe a 1 hour might be a bit of a barrier to some as well. So my recommendation to you is to say before the meeting. However, the chair will, and their office will have to find a way. In my view, it would not be appropriate for an assistant in the trustee office to approve it. It would have to be the chair or the vice chair. At the very most, the only thing I can suggest is the chair might be able to delegate it to the vice chair at the very most. And that's the only thing I can think of, just to make sure that there is a response in time, because the consequences are very significant. I do also wonder, we may add something in here about lateness, right? That lateness is not non-attendance. And so, or it could be your attendance
If
is
the
marked by
intent
the
is-
end of the
Yeah.
meeting, right? Something like that.
I've got late on the page. Yeah, I was asking about this as well.
Okay.
And I also think, because this is trustee Laskin's, does her point about discretion of the chair and whether that's being fairly granted or not create a need for an appeal process? Like, I don't know, like how, like, if once and you're done, like who decides you're done? Like does the chair then tell you to be, have your computer and stuff on trustee services desk by the end of business Wednesday? Like, I'm not sure how the dominoes fall, and should there be a mechanism available to say, I couldn't, obscure things happened, and I'm just asking, but trustee Alaskan has the chair, or sorry, you have the floor. Did you have any further
Asking for
questions?
Clarification. Well, I mean, we can't cover every circumstance. I guess, though, my perspective is people should be here in person. That's my perspective. Prior to COVID, we didn't have any of these issues. People made efforts to come, and some people had to come an hour and a half away, 2 hours away. Some people could take a 15-minute TTC ride to come. It depended on where you lived in the city. That was just life. You knew the obligation was to come and attend. And frankly, I think we have suffered as a school board because people are not here in person to look people in the eye and to make comments like that. So I am wondering if there should be something in here that talks about best practice or building relationships, or, you know, where possible, the importance of a board to collaborate, reach consensus. I don't know, maybe it's too judgmental, it's best in person or something, but I mean, I do understand circumstances to miss virtually, but I do think we suffer as a board in terms of tone, in terms of what people feel free to say online, the decorum piece. And as if you're chairing a meeting, it's just so much easier to chair if people are in the room. It's very, we've all of us on this call have had circumstances where we've chaired meetings, and it's much more awkward. I can't see, like, even with this, because the slide is up, I don't see the trustees online, you know, for seconding, for moving or whatever. So I'm just wondering if there could be some general statement. Like, this isn't meant to be punitive, that you have to ask for to call them virtually, because the default should be you're being here in person. But our default, it seems to me, during the last few years, is that we're virtual. And it's like special if you make the effort to come in person. This is not any comment, Trustee Williams and Trustee King, on attendance at this meeting. I want to make that crystal clear, because we're talking about board and committee of the whole. But I really think for board meetings to have a full board from a public perspective, when we are telecasting the meetings, it just, I think it's better. Anyway, I've rambled. Please go ahead. Please.
Well, and
Chair.
I think that's, and I agree wholeheartedly about being in, coming and being in, and I've chaired meetings, and hearing things got away from me because it took me time to, so now I've got to read, did I hear what I think I heard? And then by the time I do that, the moment to kind of wander in and kind of correct the ship kind of thing is gone. And so that doesn't happen when you're all in the room as well. So I think it's easier for, but I don't see there any reason why there can't be some preamble around the benefits of doing this. And with that, I'll return the chair.
Thank you very much. Is there a next question, Associate Director?
Through the chair, I don't think so.
Okay.
And I should say that once we nail down the wording in this procedure, how it operationalizes, this is something we'll work with the chair, the vice chair, and trustee services to make sure that, for example, if there is a very late notification of requests to attend electronically, that staff is monitoring it up until the start of the meeting so that they can bring it to the attention of the chair. But perhaps we have practices so that a phone call can be made. You know what I mean? If it's very, very urgent circumstances at the very last minute, maybe we highly encourage phone calls instead, something like that.
Thank you very much. Associate Director, the recommendation here was to approve, but because of the timing of this and we don't have to be ready for September, could you possibly bring it back to the next meeting more finalized?
Through chair, yes.
Thank you. So what would the appropriate recommendation be then? Refer back to staff to incorporate comments, or what's the appropriate recommendation?
Yes, please. To the chair. Yes, please. If you could refer it back to staff, incorporate more comments.
Thank you very much, Ms. Joseph Dowers. Really appreciate that. Can I have a mover for that, please? Trustee King, do you want a chance?
King, well, go ahead.
Trustee Williams, second.
Thank you very much. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much. Now, I'm mindful of the time, but
Madam
I'm also,
May I interrupt for a second? I just wanted to clarify. I was trying to get off mute for the previous item. What we would usually do is bring the changes, the revisions to the board in the blue folders, so that the recommendation could be that the report as presented be approved. So I just wanted to point that out.
Thank you.
Seeing the comments incorporated, we would have the clean copy in the blue folders.
That would be
the board.
excellent.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Whatever your practice is, we would appreciate that. I'm just checking with my colleagues' time. Do we have 10 minutes to have just a discussion about board bylaws? Trustee McLean is okay. Trustee Williams, Trustee King, can you hang out for another 10, 15 minutes?
For just 10, yes.
Just 10?
Yes.
Thank you very much. Associate Director, I'm wondering if we could
Sure.
have a brief conversation.
Okay, thank you very much. I can start. We did prepare a PowerPoint slide, and really it's a conversation starter, not a fulsome discussion on this topic. So really to start planting some seeds in
Please.
your mind. So issues for consideration. Next slide, please. So we've gathered some information based on our experience as staff. Some of the items that we think probably should be looked at by the subcommittee are the concept of motion to receive. Currently, there is a requirement to have a vote to receive a report that has been presented. So it seems redundant, and so our recommendation is to remove the voting requirement. Once it's on the floor for discussion, it's deemed to have been received in our view. Election of the chair, vice chair, and representatives to external organizations and also to any type of committee. Right now, it's a two-step process. One, how will you conduct the vote? Two, then you do the vote. We are recommending that the default is secret ballot. And then if there's a desire to have an open ballot instead, that there's a vote to go into open ballot. I think this will make things a lot faster in that process. Speaking time limits at committee meetings. As you know, there's unlimited number of times that someone can go back into the speaking list. And so I think for a matter of efficiency, to make sure that we can get through a lot of the policy work and the governance work that the board needs to get through, that we have a maximum of 3 times. So essentially 15 minutes of one direction questions, right? So that's something I think is reasonable. Next slide, please. Speaking time at committees and boards by community advisory committees and staff. Right now it's unlimited. And we would recommend that we establish limits on this. So again, staff as well. We also have to be disciplined in that too. One item for discussion. Right now at board meetings, we've had changes in practices over time. At one point, it was unlimited board celebrations at the start of a meeting. And then it shrunk to be no more than 5 minutes per item. And so what we are suggesting that there be some sort of limitation so that we can get to the business of the board. We've put 15 minutes for now, but of course that's open for discussion. So I don't think there's anything else. If you can just go to the next slide. Oh, there's more, sorry. Maybe the crowd pleaser recommendation to have a soft stop at 10 p.m. and a hard stop at 11. I think we've come a long way in the 11 years I've been here when we used to have meetings that finish at 2 and 3 a.m. in the morning.
Exactly.
So I think we can probably do a better job actually with more sleep in our brains. And delegations, I think there's a whole host of things that we would recommend that the board take a look at improving our delegation procedures. I'll leave it at that for now. Next slide. A key issue that relates to the topic that we dealt with before about in-person attendance is whether the Planning and Priorities Committee is considered a committee of the whole. So under the bylaws, and we had a discussion about this the last time there was a bylaw review committee, it was determined by the bylaw review committee and ultimately the board that the committee of the whole is actually just a meeting format. And then that Planning Priorities Committee is a committee with all board members. And I think having some sort of clarity on what is a committee of the whole, is that planning priorities or is that not? I think if we land somewhere, I think it would be very important to clarify because that impacts the requirement to attend in person. My understanding is that some other boards don't consider planning priorities committee type of committee to be a committee of the whole, and therefore the in-person requirement is not required. And of course, open to other issues. So I would ask that trustees in the subcommittee start thinking about what they want to see in future bylaw changes, and we'll have a more fulsome discussion in future meetings.
Thank you very much to staff. I'm wondering if we could receive copies of this so we can
Sure.
think and add and be ruminate on it? Oh, thank you. Thank you very much.
And it's been sent.
Apparently, we've already received it, so that's pretty excellent. So we don't have time for discussion now, but I did know that staff did the work in order to begin to define the scope. So I didn't want to lose the opportunity for that to be presented to us. Given that we still have a few minutes, is there anything right away that people would like to comment on? Trustee McLean? No? Trustee Williams?
Through the chair, just to express appreciation to the associate director and staff for compiling those bullet points and those potential revisions. Like fully see like some that like would really be appreciated. So just a quick thank you.
Thank you very much, Trustee King.
Also really eager to see this portion of the work move forward. My only comment is a facetious one in that I think we could probably vote on a hard stop at 11 right now, but a little bit more humor before we adjourn.
Thank you very much. The only thing that might be missing is calling the question. Because, you know, I'm not sure if people can speak 3 times. If there's still a need for calling the question, I just think that should be a conversation. And if you've already spoken, you can't call the question. So it's interesting how you position yourself in meetings. I would have loved to have been able to call a question at a previous meeting, but unable to because I had already spoken way at the beginning, like an hour before. So I would appreciate seeing that. So thank you. That was just a discussion. Motion to adjourn. Thank you, Trustee McLean, seconded by Trustee King.
Yeah.
I see her picture. Thank you, Trustee Williams. Have a great rest of the day. Thank you,
Thank you,
staff,
everyone.
very much.
Great day. Bye.
Bye-bye.